What is going on? What is cracking, Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and today is a great day to be alive. Let me just tell you, for those of you who've been following the feed or following the Hinesights Podcast, or those of you who are just joining us for the very first time, today is the day after my 22nd anniversary of my attempt off the Golden Gate Bridge to try to end my life. 22 years of being here tomorrow, one day at a time, while living with chronic and regular thoughts of suicide. I never attempted again because I realized my thoughts didn't have to become my actions. And that's what we're here at the Hinesights Podcast to help teach all of you or those you love who are struggling with what I call brain pain, what others call mental illness, but there's a negative connotation to the term mental all by itself. Let's call it what it is, brain pain. Your brain is tangible. If they open your skull up for surgery, they can touch it and fool around in there and help make you better. But if you have a brain disease, like I do with bipolar disorder, you need help. You need people to get your back and help you find a hope and healing and recovery from your brain pain. And you need to find a way to stay here. And this is what today's podcast and wonderful guest is all about, staying alive. Today, we're here with the one and the only, the great, the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Kilpatrick. Frank is a phenomenal film producer. He's had many other hats before that, but he is an amazing human being. He and his wife do great work, and they are tremendous friends and confidants. And Frank made the film Stay Alive, which you might have been seeing on Amazon Prime Video. It's out right now. You better get to it if you haven't gotten there yet. Frank, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here on the Hinesights Podcast. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for that very enthusiastic start to our conversation. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. Frank, are you still a resident of Manhattan Beach?
Been here for a few years. Yes, sir.
A few years, okay. And
I'm by LAX.
Oh, by LAX. I know it well. And you is it true that you're retired from your career in marketing?
Well, not entirely.
Not entirely, not for this film.
I've been doing films like this project. I've done some work in the area of encouraging vaccination during COVID. We did a series of public service announcements. We probably got 6,000 or 7,000 no-charge airings of that. We've done our gratitude series of audio, video, affirmational programs, and so we're doing a lot of things. Looking for some new social activities.
You're doing a lot of things in film and PSAs and things like that, and you're really reaching a lot of people, which is incredible. Getting folks to get out and get their vaccine, getting folks to think about the things they're grateful for, which is really important. I don't know if I think you know this because we probably went over this in the film Stay Alive, but maybe let me know if you don't remember. Gratitude and resilience are the two most protective factors from suicide. When someone Indeed. When someone can hold gratitude inside their pain, they can survive it, right? And the film Stay Alive that you produce, it helps people learn how to hold that gratitude, but it also helps people learn how to be resilient. So that's incredible. So you've applied your communicating skills to public service on so many occasions, which is just beautiful. And tell us about the time that you spent with your wife, Linda, helping pharmaceutical companies sign up patients for clinical trials and how that all came into pass. How did that start with you?
Well, that was a prior chapter. And the short answer is that we were involved in enrolling patients for clinical studies, everything from diabetes to sleep disorders, a number in what in the pharmaceutical field is called CNS, central nervous system, which includes psychiatric drugs. And so we helped people to get their drugs, the pharmaceutical companies to get the drug completed more, registration completed more quickly and get them to people faster as well.
Wonderful. And from there, you ended up building this awareness campaign through this film about suicide prevention, Stay Alive. Can you tell me, I know I'm in the documentary, I'm a part of it, but can you tell me and the audience
You're the main part of it.
Oh, come on. Can you tell us about the audience listening, watching, viewing, subscribing right now? And if you haven't subscribed, get to it right now. What are you waiting for? Frank, what was the impetus behind creating the film Stay Alive? What was your vision there?
Well, I think it goes back to conversations I had with two close friends, one Mark Goulston in the film and the other Rayko Takahashi in the film, about the mental health challenges that are all around us, thinking of COVID, thinking of social changes, thinking of economic uncertainty. There's a lot of what you're calling brain pain in the general population. And so we we scratched our head and thought of what could we do that would perhaps provide some comfort for people, give people some hope, connect with people. And of course, from there, and your connection with Mark Goulston, the three of you became this conversational gambit that really presented, I think, as you say, gratitude and hope and education in a very understandable format. And so that was really the starting point, was thinking what we could do that would be of some value to a lot of people who are in pain. And the thing that we've learned, even as we've released the film and we've gotten feedback from social media and all, is that so many people are getting benefit from in just a general sense, people who are not in the deepest point of dark despair, but who are in, I guess they call it being alive, the ups and downs of living. There's some anxiety, there's some depression, there's good and there's bad, and people need to know that they're not alone. And so the core message, as I say, is somewhat expanded to touch people who are in a lot of different places. And they may be going through something specific. They may be going through, as I say, the general challenge that it is today. People they've lost jobs, they've new working environments, people working from homes, losing that socialization they used to have. All of those things kind of kick in together to be stressors. And so we thought that, again, recognizing those as being realities for so many people and letting them know that there are others out there in the same boat, we thought that was valuable.
Well, it proved to be extremely valuable. I mean, look at your numbers now on TikTok. Can you tell us, break down roughly how many likes do you have on TikTok from the videos you presented there?
I think we're up to, let me take a look, because I check it
Let's check it. Let's find out the actual number. That's great.
Let's check it. I think we're at about 130,000 likes right now. There've been over 1 million views.
130,000 likes, 1 million views and counting. Please go ahead, Frank. That's incredible.
No, I think it's interesting. As I say, we've found that this TikTok channel and other social media outlets have actually turned to be to provide some good. One of the challenges, and you and I have talked about it before, is that social media can be kind of a negative for folks, because while it ostensibly brings people together, it can also be a little disconnecting for some. Particularly in the adolescent age group, a lot of whom have responded to the film and to your guidance and mentoring, and they report that social media can be challenging. And yet here's finally a good use for it, where we find that we've had these likes, and we find comments that people are just about universally supportive of your story, of the theme of the film. And as I say, the thing that we're doing is adding more and more content to that channel, because people are subscribing and coming back and looking for new material, even if they're not in a point of such deep despair. They are just inspired by reading information, let's call it education, inspiration, all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know in the work you do in film, video media is the fastest way to reach anyone right now. And there's far too much negative, hateful, hurtful, spiteful, angry, aggressive forms of media out there that are dangerous to certainly the youth and adults alike. I think of like when a video of a man running up to an individual or an older individual and punching them in the back of the head, and that going viral and that being funny to people. It makes me sick to my stomach.
You're talking about today's headline, right?
Yeah. And that kind of, but it's happened. Besides today, it's happened all over the world.
It's true.
And people film it, and they film it on purpose, and they upload it, and it goes wildly viral, and people are laughing at the person who got hurt. And these people are causing things like brain damage sometimes. And it breaks my heart in two. But what makes me very inspired is films like Stay Alive that reach out to the masses, or the videos on TikTok that you cut from Stay Alive or other videos. and you show people that they matter and that they're important and that they're valued and that they're loved. And what this does is these types of videos for specifically for suicide prevention, and with the idea of helping someone stay here, remain alive, and be here tomorrow, they have a tremendous impact on the psyche of someone who's in that kind of pain, right?
It's true. Again, the comments that we're reading are of people who they fall into several categories, but several people have seen you speak at a school or speak at a public event or read your materials and have been inspired by you. Some people have reached out and been very open in their need for some media connection. And there's similar themes played out in the comments and the likes, but it's rewarding going to what you're saying about what's so often gone viral in social media, the negatives, the things where you laugh at somebody, the things where you hurt somebody, either physically, like the poor guy in the airplane or something else, or emotionally hurt them. Yeah. But in any case, the results have been so consistently rewarding or positive that people are saying they're getting value. And isn't that great?
It is great. And I can tell you that in the video work I've done over the last 2 decades, and then doing this with you guys, with Stay Alive and Mark Goulston and you, Frank, and Linda and Paul Emami and Rayko, of course, in doing this kind of work, because I've done it for the last 22 years, since 7 months after my attempt, and I have received hundreds of thousands of messages saying that the videos I've created and the story I've told, whether in person or video or on paper in an article, have helped save lives. And I don't, Frank, I don't own that. I don't say I save lives. I'm a conduit. I give a message. I go out, do this work every day, and people go home, they do the work, and they're saving their own lives. They just see it in a different way. And I think that Stay Alive embodies that. I think Stay Alive shows perspectives from 3 individuals that have walked very different paths, but come to a table, literal at the table, break bread or have some water or coffee, and they have a conversation about how people in brain pain can find reasons to survive that pain. I'd like to talk briefly about Rayko. Can you tell me about how you met her and why you wanted her to be a big part of this film?
Let me first speak to the comment you made about the kind of the format of Stay Alive, because I think it was a kind of a lucky happenstance that we did come up with this approach where it was, as you say, like a coffee shop conversation amongst friends, a lot more powerful than a lecture or something like that, or something that was much more structured. So I think that's seems to have been the thing that kind of captured people, the trade-off between the 3 of you. Going to your question about Rayko, I met her when we started doing music together about something over 6 years ago. And it was just a great connection because for me, as you were alluded to before, this was a new chapter in my life, having left the 9-to-5 world and looking to make a social contribution in other areas. And one of my choices, along with some of the volunteering activity that Linda and I have done and some of the other projects that we're still working on, music has been a way to undertake kind of a personal exploration for me. And so Rayko had, as I always like to say, she had the great voice, she had musical ability, and I had a pencil. So it was a great way a great point towards some creative enrichment, and her knowing, over those years, getting to know her backstory, I knew that she had experienced challenges, as we all have, and she was open to sharing them. Yeah. And as you experienced in the film, she talked about growing up in Japan, and which I guess from when I hadn't known this, but from watching the film, I learned is the suicide capital of the world. And for a bunch of reasons, including overwork, cultural things I can't really say that I understand, but it's a very powerful influence. In any case, just knowing about her background in a variety of areas, I thought that her contribution would be powerful, and it was. And of course, Mark, as a psychiatrist who specialized in suicide prevention at UCLA for so many years, never lost a patient to suicide, his contribution in terms of having specific steps for exposing your inner needs with regard to brain pain was valuable. And of course, your stories, your experience, and frankly, your way of presenting it all came together in such a great way.
I saw that you got a couple of reviews that came out, 8 out of 10 for the film. And there was even a review that came out that said, this isn't your typical beautiful scenery and somatic view documentary, but it holds your attention nonetheless. And it makes you think about who to reach out to in your circle that's going through this kind of struggle. And I think anybody listening, viewing, watching, subscribing right now to the Hinesights Podcast, if you haven't seen Stay Alive and you enjoy documentary film, or even if you just think someone in your life who's struggling mentally, please go to Amazon Prime Video, look it up, Stay Alive, watch the film, and if you can, share it with the person in your life who's struggling with brain pain, because it's going to have an immediate impact on their life, and it's going to affect, hopefully, change in that life. Frank, you mentioned Dr. Goulston, Mark Goulston, good friend of both of ours now, and you've known him for a bit, and he has had an incredible career in psychiatry, in mental health, in suicide prevention. He reaches a wide audience.
And other areas as well, by the way. I mean, he's spoken in Russia. He's spoken in front of YPO. He's quite accomplished as a Renaissance man.
Yeah, well, he's a Renaissance man. What hasn't he done? He's done it all. He's written 9 books. He's a very prolific individual on many levels. And I would like to know from your perspective, why was it so important to have Dr. Goulston in the film and have his perspective?
Well, I think, again, his ability to kind of organize the pieces of, you mentioned it a moment ago, of gratitude, of kind of the intervention of the brain. And I'm sure he's got a more articulate way to put it, but the starting point is that he's just a guy who has been very effective in a variety of situations, working with different people and bringing them to a level of greater understanding of themselves, greater peace within. And as you were just mentioning, encouraging people to reach out to others. And as I was saying, that reaching out doesn't have to be with someone who's in a deep, dark place. It could be just a generous touch in any environment. One of the things that Mark, of course, talks about from time to time is just as a generous act is what can you do to reach out, perhaps even for the homeless. And he gave us the assignment that Rayko and I did, not to us specifically, but just in general. He's put it out there that you can make giveaway packages for people who are unhoused. And we went around and did that about a month ago and distributed some items to folks at a shelter and to people who were in need. And the one thing that I liked from that story, well, I guess there are 2 things. First is it's enriching to undertake an act of generosity. And also, one of the things that leapt out was that asking an individual with whom you're interacting, asking them their name can make a lot of difference, because that really makes it an interaction, not just a donation and then run, but something where it humanizes the relationship. And so it's those kinds of insights that Mark has brought, as I say, across the spectrum of different situations that I think makes him a very gifted contributor. We're glad to have him in our world, aren't we, Kevin?
You're very glad.
And in particular, in this film, where he is able to provide a kind of an academic starting point for the discussion that melds, I think, very, very well with what you and Rayko have done.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think often about the work that Dr. Goulston's done, and hearing you say what you did through his challenge, really, with the unhoused or homeless population, and going on giving those care packages. I think that one thing that a lot of people don't recognize is that people who volunteer for a cause that significantly benefits someone outside of them are 63% more mentally healthy than those who do not. That's think about that. It's fascinating. And why is that? I believe that is because you are giving and receiving respect. And that lights up a
And
pathway.
receiving, as you just said.
Receiving respect. And that lights up pathways in your brain that make you feel better. It's fascinating how that works. So all of us can learn from people like Dr. Mark Goulston, Rayko, from yourself, that if we truly want to make a dent on this earth, in this life, we're all cogs in the wheel. We're all specks of sand in this giant universe. You go outside of Earth, there are 8 other planets that exist. And you go outside of that, there are galaxies and wormholes, and there are black holes, and what's beyond that, who knows, right? So when you think about how small we are, giving back to someone in need just lightens up your heart. And I think that is so important to do. And for any of you who are watching or listening right now, if you haven't ever given to a cause outside of yourself, begin today or tomorrow, because it's going to warm your heart. It's going to make you feel good instantaneously. And it can help you find your true purpose in life, which is giving back.
It's proven to be therapeutic. And let me just add a little PS to that, because it's something that I read just a week or so ago, and it was about contributing. And it was about the importance of self-care in that process. Meaning, and you said it a minute ago, if you've never done it, you should do it. You should do something because it's powerful for the other person and powerful for you. The article I was reading, though, talked about doing it in disciplined chunks, though. In other words, not abandoning yourself to the process, because that can be hurtful. If you dedicate, in this case, they said dedicate a couple hours a week to this kind of initiative of whatever help you're providing, so that phenomenon known as caregiver overload doesn't take place.
Right.
So it's useful to take care of yourself in that process. I want to add that little PS.
No, that's really important. Self-care is the best care. And if you're overworking yourself to try to help other people, but you're not helping yourself and not taking care of your mental well-being, then you're going to crash, and then it's all for naught, right? So that's not good.
No benefit.
Frank, we know that mental health has caught the attention of public officials around the nation, even around the globe recently, given the effects of COVID. And what we have to recognize is that the mental health crisis was there before COVID. It just got amplified by COVID, and people are paying more attention to it than ever before in the history of humankind. The White House just pledged $700 million of funding for mental education and prevention for fiscal year 2023. I think that is an incredible number that we've never seen before. What do you think about all of that, and how do you think that's going to help the cause?
Well, I think the biggest, well, there's several benefits to that, and as you say, focus on mental health didn't happen just with COVID, but it's a gradual process that it's become much less stigmatized. Think of your situation 22 years ago. Did you have an opportunity to really come public with how you were feeling? As I recall, the short answer is no, right? So that's a much bigger opportunity for people to responsibly talk about where they are. It's in the president's message, and it's an opportunity. I think as I say, the devil's in the details. So we'll have to see how that's accomplished, because it's really up to you and me and the viewers of this podcast to take individual effort in addition to what could be done at an institutional or governmental level. Because, for example, there may not be enough clinically trained individuals to take on all the needs that they're present today, particularly in the adolescent community, where, as I know we've discussed before, the individuals' brains are not as developed. We could ask Dr. Goulston about that and how that affects things, but they say that there aren't enough school counselors. So notwithstanding the money available, perhaps we need to all be peer counselors for each other, and being generous, in being empathetic, and being understanding, and recognizing that there are dark spots in our days, and seeing that as legitimate, because I think that was again, what we've seen as an evolution over many years. There just wasn't discussion of mental challenges, and today there's a much more open conduit to discussing it.
Yeah, I think so. I think more people are rationalizing it, normalizing it, humanizing the conversation of mental health. But I also think that we've been given an opportunity, given the kind of strike that COVID had on the country and the globe, to look at mental health and say, this is where we are now. This is where we need to be. How do we get there? What do we need to do to achieve a reduced number of suicides around this country, but around the globe as well? And how do we reach kids in that epic amount of pain? One thing I learned quite recently from Dr. Johanna Wilson, who is out Mansfield, Ohio, wonderful psychiatrist, is that they have discovered in the brains of people who are chronically suicidal that there is a piece of their brain that is on a loop, and it becomes a perseveration. So it becomes a constant thought that I have to take my life. And there's a piece of the brain that is, I would call it, based upon her information, dampened. There's an actual piece of the brain that usually lights up and fires up that is dampened. And when that happens, you tend to perseverate about things like suicide or self-harm. So it's actually a brain issue. It's a true brain disease, these chronic thoughts of suicide, which I have personally. But I'm able to never attempt again. And I never attempted after I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge for 22 years while living with all of these thoughts of suicide, because I say 4 simple but very effective words: I need help now. And I think we talked about this in the film. I say, I need help now to anyone willing to listen. And in 22 years of saying I need help now, somebody has always been willing to empathize with my pain. So if we can teach people the tools, like in the film we do, to ask for help even in your darkest of hours, and to recognize that your thoughts don't have to become your actions, they can simply be your thoughts, then we could do a lot of good, Frank, and save a lot more lives. And I know Stay Alive, the film, is doing that. Frank, the film is streaming on Amazon Prime, just to remind people. And it aims to get people talking and thinking about what many public officials consider a vast and growing problem of suicide. Frank, tell us about the partnership with Amazon Prime and how that came to be, if you can.
Well, we came to just try to expand the reach out. And of course, Amazon Prime is very substantial. People can rent the film, they can buy the film, they can even make it available for school presentation, et cetera. Although I think they'd rather hear you one-on-one in those kind of situations. And but let me ask you a question, just to
Sure.
go back a half a step. By the way, beyond Amazon Prime, we're hoping to get some other distribution channels open at some point not too far in the future. And if any of your viewers or listeners have ideas for that, we're all ears, because, so as I say, our motivation on this is it's a nonprofit enterprise, and it's to get it out in front of as many people as possible. I just wanted to go back to your just understand, frankly, a little bit more about what the clinician was saying about the toxic loop that was taking place there. It sounds very powerful, and so maybe you could just say a little bit more about that, because I'd like to learn.
Absolutely. So what she was describing when I was in Mansfield, Ohio, just a couple of days ago on a panel we were both on, is something that I've known inherently internally, right? Is that when I get these thoughts of suicide, they're intense, they're intrusive, and they're obsessive. And I perseverate on them. So I think about suicide, and then it's just snowball effect. It just keeps going. And it's like, I have to take my life. No, don't take your life. But I have to, but I'm a bad person. No, you're not a bad person. And it's just this constant cycle. And what's happening in the minds of youth and adults alike all around the world is that when they come to a suicidal space, there is a loop in the brain's limbic system that plays that message over and over in your head.
I see.
Oftentimes, so for people like me, I live with auditory and visual hallucinations. And the auditory and visual hallucinations are telling me I have to kill myself. So it's not just the loop I have in my brain. I actually hear a voice or see someone telling me I have to do this. It's very terrifying. So my brain,
Must be.
Your brain is so powerful, Frank. Your brain is only using 10% of it at any given moment. And what some people believe is that the people who suffer psychosis or deal with psychosis are using just a slight bit more percentage of their brain, and it's affecting their mental capacity. And so we know so little about the brain, Frank, but we're learning more and more every day. And when they look at brain scans of people who are chronically suicidal, you can see where the thoughts are coming from on the scan.
Does that give you, and I guess I'm just, again, working out loud here, does that give you, or would it give anyone, a little bit of comfort knowing that it's just the brain kind of gone awry as compared to something.
It does for me. I've gotten the brain
Yeah.
scan. I can look and I can see on the scans, this is what it looks like when this is going on in my head. And I don't have to act upon that misnomer in my brain because it's a brain issue. It's not me. I'm not a bad person for thinking suicidal thoughts. I'm not wrong. It's not my fault, but I need to address it, understand it, and fight it. And so that's what we want to teach people all over the world is that just because you have the thought doesn't mean you have to take the action. Instead, turn to Frank, turn to me, go to our social medias, reach out, say hello, let us know what you're thinking. We'll do our best to try to get you to a safe place.
What were the 4 words?
I need help now. The second tactic is my thoughts don't have to become my actions. As in, my thoughts don't have to own, rule, or define what I do next. They can simply be my thoughts.
You know, I like the expression because it is general enough that you could ask many people that. It wouldn't have to mean something that is so overwhelmingly demanding that someone wouldn't be willing to do it. Right. I need help now could mean just a minute's worth of comfort, or it could mean something more substantial.
And people always say to me, they say, Kevin, what do I do? What do I do when someone's suicidal? If someone tells me after I ask them, are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life, or do you have the means? The top 3 questions that the AI algorithm in the crisis text line has determined get a more truthful answer than even the questions, are you thinking of suicide? Or are you thinking of self-harm? Because of the taboo against the word suicide and the idea that self-harm is not suicide, it's self-harm. So by asking the 3 questions, are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? Do you have the means? You get a more truthful answer than those other questions. And I'll say this, Frank, when I turn and say I need help now, it's not always the first, second, third, maybe even fourth person that's going to get my back. But by the sheer probability of the number of people I'm discussing this to or saying this to, someone in 22 years has always been willing to empathize with my pain and help get me to a safe place. And it doesn't mean that I go to a psych ward every time. I have many times, 10 times in my life for suicidal crisis. But what it often means, Frank, is someone sits next to me, puts their arm around my shoulder and says, I got your back. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm here for you. What do you need from me right now?
We were talking about adolescence and it just, as you were saying, I need help now. I'm thinking that parents could be just more valuable, more successful, more helpful as parents if they school themselves in this process of taking the time, and it doesn't have to be a lot, or it might be, of just providing that assistance, that support, that love, frankly, at that moment. And that being, I guess the reason I'm thinking again about adolescence is because I've been reading about the adolescent brain, how it's not developed, and how there are hormones that are erratic. And so for people in their teens in particular, that might be something that they need, and having a ready source of support, well, that seems so valuable.
It is valuable. It's important. And that's the kind of the forward movement we need to have in this field. Frank, one thing that breaks my heart is that in almost 70 years of the suicide prevention effort, when it was first started by Dr. Edwin Schneidman and Dr. Norman Farborough 70 years ago. Dr.
Goulston's colleagues, as I remember, right?
Dr. Edwin Schneidman was Dr. Goulston's mentor. He walked him into his career path, which is incredible. Dr. Schneidman was an amazing human being. I got to meet Dr. Schneidman and Dr. Farborough via teleconference, Dr. Schneidman in person. Got to honor them and give them an award for a Lifetime Achievement Award years ago, which was incredible. But I'll say this, in 70 years, Frank, we have not significantly reduced suicides.
Is that right?
We're doing something wrong, Frank. And not necessarily you or I or this film. This film is doing great work. I'm talking about the general suicide prevention community. It has not met the need. And it's not their fault. We have the research we have. It is limited. Not all research is good. Not all things that are good need to be researched. But I think there are ways for us to humanize the conversation and have parents, the people that are raising our children, have parents be educated, because more 4 to 10-year-old children than ever before in the history of the human race are dying by suicide. How does a 4-year-old know how to take their lives, Frank? That's horrifying. So we need to have the conversation about suicide at the breakfast, lunch, and dinner table with our children who are even 4 years of age, because they understand what it means because of media. They know how to do it because of media, and they're taking their lives because some of them are being abused or neglected at home. And we need to arm our parents with every ounce of suicide prevention method that they can possibly muster so that they can help save the lives of the next generation, so we can quell these numbers and truly find a way to reduce suicide. And I can tell you, I have one of the answers. One of the answers, Frank, is something that we know in its circles of effort, it's worked very, very well to reduce suicides to near zero or zero. And that is meditation. Meditation, and I'll just break it down in a concrete example. I think it was about 10 years ago or so, one U.S. Air Force base, just the commander down, decided we're going to mandate transcendental meditation for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening for every single person on this base every single day without fail. You're mandated to do it. We have to do it all together. The civilians on the base did it, the workers on the base did it, the commander on the base did it, and all the officers did it. And suicide rates dropped 60%, Frank. Rates of homicide dropped, rates of drug abuse and alcohol abuse dropped significantly. And then, Frank, the new command came in, abolished it, said it's all a bunch of hoopla, and it all went away. And guess what went right back up?
Nothing good.
Nothing good, Frank. All those numbers rise right back to the top. We didn't learn our lesson. But right now, the founders of Transcendental Meditation, the CEO of Transcendental Meditation, the David Lynch Foundation, Bob Roth, is actually bringing this to the entire DoD because of the massive problem of suicide there in the military. They're bringing this to the entire DoD. Pentagon is behind it. It's going to be incredible. And we are going to see in the military a reduction in suicides, I believe, in the next 10 years that is going to be next to none. And if we can take that idea and help people learn meditation that has been proven to reduce suicides, I think we can help a lot of people. That's just one answer, just one thing we can do. There are 3 other top ways to reduce suicides that most people aren't talking about. Reduction of access to lethal means is one of the most proven effective ways to reduce suicides. That's why, because we're putting up a net on the bridge right now, as of 2023 in November, when that net is finished, not one more person will ever again die off the Golden Gate Bridge. It will become the largest, brightest, most powerful beacon for suicide prevention around the world, where it was once the largest point for suicide in the world. And so we're going to stop it there. And that's going to say to the world, barriers, nets, and tall railings are due in places where high rates of suicide occur, because it's working here. We're saving lives here. We can save lives there. It reduces suicides 40 to often 100%. Because people recognize how cared for and loved they are, and they don't attempt. And then the next thing you got is the lifelines and the crisis text lines. Those are proven to save lives. They do it all over the world. And then you've got the caring letters or the caring packages. And the caring letters were invented by Dr. Jerry Motto, VA hospital psychiatric head back in the 1970s in the Bay Area. And he and his wife created the caring letters for people leaving the psych wards. Now, I don't know if you know this, but they don't follow up with you after you leave a psych ward. I've been in 10 of them. They don't make sure you get home safe. They don't make sure you're with your family. They don't write you. But Dr. Motto in the 70s wrote letters to all of his patients who would leave the hospital. Suicides there dropped over 60%. Recidivism back in the hospital dropped 40%. And drug and alcohol abuse dropped impressively. And what that was, he sent letters to everyone after they exited that psych ward and said, I care about you. I'm thinking about you. I'm compassionate for what you're going through. I hold no judgment for what you're dealing with. And here are the signs, symptoms, and triggers I'm worried about in you. And I don't want you to be in denial, but reach out because I got your back. And it had a tremendous effect in keeping people here.
You know, these are such inspirational insights that you've had, everything from meditation, et cetera. I would just pray or put out a hope that those are not politicized, because even as you're mentioning a minute ago, there's an initiative at the federal level, and let it not be nibbled to death by ducks, as they say.
Yeah.
Let us just think of the positives of having people here that might not have been here if it weren't for these efforts. Speaking of meditation in the schools, I've heard similar kinds of outcomes, but then there's been a reluctance because it's thought to be not culturally correct, religiously correct, whatever it is. And I hope we could back away from the coefficient of politicizing it, so we could just get the benefit of those things, all of which you mentioned, because they're from what you're saying, they're tremendously powerful. And wouldn't it be great just to leave them in the context of their effectiveness rather than the debate over some part of the initiative?
I'm in total agreement, and that's one thing about transcendental meditation. It's scientifically proven to work. It's evidence-based, scientifically informed, and the best part is it's not a religious practice. It's about reciting a mantra in your head quietly and silently to yourself that you don't share with anybody else, and that your meditation is your time. It's your personal experience for self-love and self-care, and you sit with yourself for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes before dinner, and you do this deep breathing, this deep resonance breathing, and you recite the mantra in your head. And what it does is it is quite frankly the most simple form of meditation, but also one of the most effective. And when you learn it and you've practiced it, I can tell you from personal experiences, I practice it every day and I'm learning how to master it. It has significantly benefited my brain health and helped me to erase the bad thoughts much quicker than it was before I was doing transcendental meditation. So if we can share these tools and techniques and strategies with people, we can help save lives. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time here, Frank. Thank you so much for taking all this time with us. We've gone over the minutes here, but I'm so grateful to have you on the show. Before we wrap up, is there anything you want to say to kind of close out the conversation here on the Hinesights Podcast, and anything you want to say about Stay Alive?
Well, just to thank you and for coming on to the program through Dr. Goulston. You and I didn't know each other at the outset of the planning for it, but Mark said, well, this is a guy you've got to have because he's got a very compelling story and you tell it so well, and you connect with people. So thank you very much for your participation and that of your team, Margaret, and for just helping us make this happen in the first place, and also helping to advance the message both through Stay Alive and through your other initiatives. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, my friends, to all of you hearing this message today, I want you to think about what we talked about. I want you to take it home to those you love. And if you personally are going through brain pain, and if you personally are considering suicide, just stop, take a breath, take 10 more. Recognize that we're all going to pass away someday. None of us are immortal. Please, I beg of you, give yourselves time plus hard work for things to change, because it takes hard work to be mentally well. It's an art to be well. And if you need my help, at Kevin Hines Story is where you go. Hinesights Podcast is what you need. We have plenty of stories from all over the world, from people who have triumphed over incredible adversity. We drop an episode every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come on next week and join us to be here tomorrow and every day after that. You are valued, you are loved, you are worthy, and you matter. And as always, if nobody else does it today, we love you and we want you to stay alive. Thank you very much.